In today's business world, change is the only constant, and mastering transformation is the ultimate key to success. Welcome to Shift and Thrive. I'm your host, Natalie Nathanson. Each week, we'll bring you conversations with CEOs who delve into how they successfully drove critical change in their organization. This show is sponsored by Magnitude Consulting, bringing you the thinking power of a growth consultancy and the getting it done power of a full-service B2B marketing agency. Today's guest is a pioneering clean tech entrepreneur who co-founded his company while still a student at the Indian Institute of Technology. Under his leadership, the company has become a global leader in industrial carbon capture. Its technology is operational in at least 50 sites worldwide, capturing millions of tons of CO2. He's been recognized as the Entrepreneur of the Year and appointed to the UK government's task force on carbon capture, usage, and storage. His company has received numerous distinctions, including the 2023 Terra Carta Seal, a recognition awarded by the Sustainable Markets Initiative, as well as inclusion in the Global Cleantech 100 list. He is the chair and CEO of Carbon Clean. Aniruddha Sharma, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here, Natalie.
It's great to have you. And to kick us off, I'd love to get a bit grounded in the broader problem space that you're working in. I'll say that a lot of our audience may not be deep in this sector. So before we get into your growth story, I wanted to start with the kind of why now behind Carbon Clean.
Absolutely. Hey, look, the biggest challenge that we are trying to solve out there is decarbonizing hard-to-abate sectors, industrial emitters, steel, cement, waste refining, petrochemicals. I think there is an amazing amount of work that has happened over the past decade or two in terms of decarbonizing the power that we use today. So we've moved from coal and gas and oil to solar and wind, and I think those are the great things. Nuclear is coming in as well. However, I think the problem around the industrial emissions is not being looked at. Not too many people have actually tried to solve the problem of decarbonizing industrial emissions, which is where we can't do anything. And that's exactly where Carbon Clean is playing. We help large-scale industrial emitters capture the carbon dioxide, which is essentially a process of removing the CO2 from the smokestacks, and then either do something with the CO2 or sequester that CO2 underground for long-term storage. We are revolutionizing the carbon capture space. And as you said, the problem statement, like why now? Why did at this point in time? Look, what's quite clear is climate change is real and it's happening. And I think the public realize, and most of the industrial companies as corporate citizens realize the same thing as well. However, they do not have the tools to do anything about their carbon emissions. So our company is providing the tools, the technology, the execution experience, delivery experience to help those industrial companies decarbonize as soon as possible. And it's a journey, right? Even if you start in 2025, it might still take you 10 years. But people want to get onto this journey right now.
Yeah, great. That was very helpful. Curious to hear, is there a lot of education involved in your sales process? You mentioned kind of customers are aware of the problem, but maybe don't have the tools. Do they know how to solve it? Are you kind of operating in a highly competitive space, or are you doing something kind of very different?
Great question. There's a lot of education process involved in our sales process. Not necessarily because customers do not know that they need to decarbonize or what technology options are available. Very simply because if you look at any large company or corporation, the people who operate these plants are quite different from people who procure stuff and quite different people who pay for stuff. And then that's quite different from sometimes what the management, the strategic view is of the business. So a lot of the times, I myself or my team, we spend time in actually bringing different actors together within the same large corporation to say, hey, look, decarbonization may be a cost out here, but by the way, if you decarbonize your sites, your bank may be able to lend you at a lower cost because the bank wants to finance lower carbon emission products out there. So I think it's just presenting a joined up join a picture takes a little bit longer than we would like. But we're trying to create a new industry here. Nobody has done this before. I sometimes call this is a fourth industrial revolution happening now, and we need to deliver this industrial revolution in about 10 years' time. I think beyond that, it'll be a little bit too late. So yeah, it's new industrial revolution, but it needs to happen really, really fast. And that's really what, building the picture takes a while.
Yeah. When I know as we spoke previously, you've shared that the timeline of the change we're seeing continues to compress, which I know I want to get into a little bit with you later. But one other question on this front is, what is the biggest motivation of your target market? Like, how much is climate, cost, compliance, other things?
That's a very good question. Very detailed as well. I think the answer depends on the geography you're in. So if you look at a lot of the European countries, it's driven by climate. It's driven by targets they've been given. There is a carbon credit pricing. So I think in certain part of the world, it's driven by the ambitious targets the countries have signed or the geographical region has signed. In some other geographies, it's driven by the need to find cheaper financing, better financing. So it's driven by that. And if you look at Asia, it's just its business, right? I mean, a lot of the Asian economies manufacture stuff that's then exported to US or Canada or Europe, and generally OECD countries. I think a lot of the Asian economies, manufacturing in Asian economies, is looking at decarbonization as a competitive edge that they can have over other suppliers. So I think it kind of varies and looks at it, but yeah, you're quite right. I think we've seen everything out there. Customers have different motivations, depending upon the geography. In some cases, some of the customers actually have motivations because just decarbonization is related to their bonus. So it had probably nothing to do, but it just had to be done. Yeah, it's a top-down mandate. So it's a variety of reasons we have seen.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And, putting my go-to-market hat on, I can already see the complexity, right? And like, how do you run your go-to-market in a different geographies and different messaging, and thinking of all of those different buyer committees and the drivers behind it.
Okay, buyer committees. That's the right word.
Yep. Great. So thank you for sharing all of that. And with that context in mind, I'd love to dig into one of the turning points that you described in your customer's journey, your company's journey, and really, how you brought in strategic investors who I believe were also your customers. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to give you a broader view, to date, we have raised about $200 million. We've raised them majorly from strategics. Some of our largest shareholders include companies like Chevron, Equinor, Aramco, TC Energy, Stemex, Marubeni, and then Wave Equity Partners is a very large shareholder. It's a fund, X Invest Managers, ICOS Capital. So we have a pretty diverse industrial base, investor base. But I think the strategic investors are in a cornerstone of our story, because when you're a technology company in a hard tech space trying to decarbonize large industrial facilities, you have to have conviction from the potential users. And if these potential users early on look at it and say, well, that's an interesting technology, I want to actually participate in the journey of scale up so that I can then go and buy a final solution. I think it's a big vote of confidence. So I think for our business, the biggest inflection point was when strategic investors started to invest, first through CVC arms, the venture capital arms, and then through the main balance sheet. I think for us, that was the biggest inflection point for the business, because it sort of gave the certainty that there are people interested in actually seeing the technology come out, get deployed. Let's get some running hours in there. But then at the same point of time, they're interested in buying the product as well. So I think for us, that's been a complete and total inflection point. It has taken a lot of hard work to actually get there, because when you get strategic investors, they they also have pretty standard and pretty tough stage gates to go through, go no-go decision-making processes, and they're just standard and it have to be done. It is a tick in the box. So it's been an interesting journey, hard road to actually follow, but very, very, very good for us very simply because we have investors in the business who are also users of the product in future.
Yeah. That makes me think of another guest I had on the podcast was a CEO of a large automotive company, and he was actually tasked in a prior role with kind of starting that investment arm and working with the innovative tech companies. So he was on the other side of the equation, but really talking about how it allowed them to really kind of get access to the latest and greatest and move at a much faster pace than if they were trying to kind of build this all on their own. So I imagine that's what you're doing for these customers.
Exactly. I think speed is the name of the game. I think innovation and technology, most of our strategic investors and customers actually understand the technology quite well, and the innovation you're bringing, how we are revolutionizing carbon capture space, industrial decarbonization space. So they understand that. But in terms of speed, we have been consistently scaling up the product 10 times every 18 months. And for majority of the customers, large strategic investors, large companies, it's impossible to scale up a product 10 times in 18 months. The internal processes and allocation of resources just wouldn't allow for it. So from their point of view, they view us as a very focused investment, very focused company that's doing nothing but scaling up carbon capture technology 10 times every 18 months.
And I'm curious, was the goal from the start to kind of approach it in this way, or was it something that kind of evolved or came up more opportunistically? And if so, kind of where did that idea come from?
It certainly came up opportunistically. I mean, it's as with any company. I mean, start with a great idea. In our case, it was, hey, look, we can actually go and sell a bunch of chemicals to carbon capture projects. So we started life as a chemical molecules business. That's where our latest patents were, our first patents were. And then over a period of time, slowly we realized there was a big gap in the market where the hardware required to capture carbon dioxide is just so clunky, it's so big, it has to be built on site. If you build anything that's less than $1 billion, it just is not commercially viable. So we said, well, there's an opportunity there. Maybe we could actually compress the size of the equipment, make it a lot more modular and replicable, and then go to the customers and say, hey, look, you could probably book an order for like 20 of them because they're all standard. Here is one that we'll give you maybe for free for trial, and then you can pick an order for 20, and it's exactly the same thing. So I think it was an evolution that happened slowly over a period of time. It definitely took a while. But as soon as we sort of zeroed down on a scale-up model, how are we going to scale up the product? That has been a key unlock for us as far as accessing the market is concerned.
Yeah, I think it's so smart. And I see, in lots of different industries, just how you can think creatively about kind of investing in the ecosystem that you live in and how to kind of build those right relationships. So it sounds like it was very fruitful for you. I'm curious to take us in a slightly different direction and hearing a little bit about your leadership style. So can you talk a bit about what's shaped, I guess maybe first, how you describe your leadership style and what's shaped that for you?
Yeah, great question. I have to say, I'm still in the process of defining my leadership style. I'm probably one of the youngest guys in our company. Our business is 166 people, really experienced people. We've probably done like 25, 30, 35 years in the industry. So I'm probably like one of the younger chaps. I think I would describe my leadership style as non-controlling and direct. I bring in people with a very clear view that, look, this is a specific problem that we have to solve as a business. You have had the experience of doing this a couple of times. I need you to go and solve this for not just for me, but for the whole business. So you have full reign. Go and do whatever you have to do. But when it comes to feedback, I'm pretty direct in my feedback. I just don't go around the loop quite sometimes. So I would say, Yeah, hands-free and direct.
Hmm. Would you say that that's changed or evolved as the company has grown? I imagine, running the company when you first started, it looks very different than today.
It certainly has, yes. It certainly has. And I think some of these things come with experience. So in early stage, we were, like I said, we were a chemical company developing new molecules. It was a lot more about research and R&D and, getting into the lab, talking to our engineers and chemists. So it was a lot more like managerial at that point of time. And then slowly it went to, okay, we start selling chemical into the market. So it was, how do we go into the market with partners? So it was a lot more about talking to our people about partnerships, outward looking. And then now it's gone to full commercial mode. We, as a business, we evolved quite a lot. We are super focused on our customers and what do our customers need. So they've kind of changed quite a lot. I think one of the things I would say is as the company has progressed, the leadership style has changed. We've also changed the values of the business as well. So every 5-ish year or so, we actually look at the values of the business because that's the North Star, right? I mean, that sort of defines your leadership style, how you want your people to behave as well. So we've recently updated our values to reflect the stage we are at and the leadership style people can expect from me, but then also kind of a behavior that I would expect from our leaders as well.
Hmm. Is there anything about kind of how you, I don't know where you are in that process, but how you roll those out? How do you make sure that they're, I think, like genuinely kind of internalized by the team? Anything around there, either philosophical or things you're kind of actively working on internally?
Yeah. So it took almost 11 months, to be honest, to get to the new values. But again, and it's kind of changed. So when we look at the values about 7 years back, all the values that point of time, it was much more of hey, let's run a poll and let people feed into like what do they feel, what do they connect with as a business, as they talk to our customers, where do they want to see their company going. So it was a lot more based on like how the people feedback into the company. So it was, I think this time around it was a lot more calibrated and focused from my side. So I set 3 priorities that for next 5 years we're going to be super focused on our customer. So our first value is customer impact, which is how are we actually going to help our customers in them delivering the impact for their shareholders or their employees for their customers. So customer impact. Second one is trust and collaboration, and it's quite important. It's that collaboration. A lot of people talk about it, but from my perspective, collaboration has to come with a little bit of trust. How do we collaborate internally within teams? How do we collaborate with our customers, with our partners? So I think that's our second value, which is the trust and collaboration. And the third value is pioneering innovation. So just innovation or innovative is not good enough value. You have to sort of define it with an objective, which is like pioneering innovation. Our customers, our investors, our shareholders, prospective customers want to work with us because we already take the leap forward and show them that, like, hey, this innovation is possible, this product is possible, and can be delivered in 18 months' time.
Yeah, that's great. And it really sounds like there was a lot of thought that went into that. I think sometimes people put those words out and it feels like lip service. I think one of the things I've always ascribed to is making sure that our values are not just like a poster on the wall, right? But that we're interviewing candidate fit based on it. We're reviewing employees as head of a leadership team regularly against those. The peers have the chance to kind of call out or award one another based on that kind of recognition, and it helps bring it to life and show that we mean it and we live by it from top to bottom.
Exactly. And we have exactly the same thing that you said. So on the company intranet, on a quarterly basis, different teams, different people can actually recommend or suggest different colleagues for demonstrating the values of the business. So the values that came up all the way from the people, but they're now being delivered and lived through by the people.
Yeah. I'd love to tackle another topic. So I'm moving us in a different direction now, but would love to talk a bit about generative AI. And I know it's reshaping lots of industries in some wildly different and similar ways. So I'm curious how that's showing up in your world, whether that's kind of internally in how you operate or externally or client expectations, kind of whichever way you want to take that.
Absolutely. I think it's a totally really interesting area, generative AI, and I think it obviously impacting everybody, smallest walks of life. So it's impacting us as well. As a business that's focused on providing technology for carbon capture, decarbonization, we're looking to actually bring in a generative AI into a couple of things. Uh, and actually, we've already implemented it at one of our sites with one of our customers, where the carbon capture plant basically runs all by itself automatically, because of the use of generative AI. I mean, I wouldn't say it's 100% generative right now because I think people are still trying to define what generative is. But I would say it's a self-learning model that is already working with less than 500 hours of operating data, automatically predicting all
That's
this.
amazing. Is that how long has that been in the works? Like, I'm curious, is it a newer directive from the last few years, or is it something that had been in the works far longer?
I think it's a very new development. I would say probably last year, middle of last year, we were asked by one of our customers where one of our carbon capture units operating is to say, "Hey, can you put AI on it?" And we were like, "Oh, for what?" And they're like, "No, we just need an AI on it." Okay, interesting. So then we went back and we said, "Okay, we were talking about customer impact. The biggest impact here we can deliver is a unit that runs all by itself so that it helps save on the human capital our customers are spending on as opposed to spend. It can also be quite an advantage because AI can run these decarbonization units depending upon what's happening at the mother unit, at the mother site where carbon emissions are coming out. I mean, we work with industrial sites. Industrial sites are generally prone to commodity prices. So sometimes they would go up, sometimes the production will go down. So AI can actually enable the carbon capture decarbonization unit to follow the production patterns at the mother site. And yeah, so it's a development that's been in the works for I would say about a year, and then we implemented it about 6 months back at customer side. So huge value that's coming out for our customer. I think the second area where we are seeing lots of impact from generative AI is in redesign of equipment and engineering. Some of our partners are now working with us, helping us deploy some of the generative AI works on engineering, or at least checking, uh, auditing the engineering work that we are delivering, completely using no human intervention. And I think that's quite interesting. That's quite interesting. It's going to change the field in a very good way.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I'm curious on kind of the sentiment or readiness across kind of your customer and maybe to like prospect base. Are customers generally kind of looking at this or using this across the board, or would you say it's still more of the kind of early adopters?
I would say still more of an early adopters world. I think there's a concern around data privacy and data protection. Um, and I think that's a big hurdle being crossed rather than use of AI at sites and locations. Um, I mean, we work with some of our customers who are providing low carbon power to the data centers. Um, and the end users in this case are data centers. They love the concept of like capturing carbon dioxide, automatically driven units, all driven by AI, feeding low carbon electrons to the data centers. So the tech world customers totally love it. But some of the more traditional, conventional customers and emitters is still a learning curve.
Yeah. Um, Wanted to talk a little bit more about the go-to-market side.
Mhm.
You talked about your partnerships, and I'm curious, what how have those partnerships taken hold, and how do you think about that as it relates to entering new markets?
That's a great question. That's a great question, again. One I could probably spend the whole day talking about the market. Uh, I mean, we have 50 operating sites in 12 countries today. So there's no way we can actually be everywhere at the same point of time, talking to all the customers. So we definitely need partners who can take the product to the end customers and users. So we generally sign three types of partnerships. One is with companies, large engineering companies, large EPC companies who are delivering these construction projects on site. So a good example is Samsung ENA, Samsung Engineering. We have the largest and most progressive engineering company in energy transition space. We've been working with them very collaboratively in decarbonizing some of the largest industrial carbon capture plants in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, in Japan, and then a couple of other places as well. So that's one partnership we sign, one type of partnership with large engineering houses. The second type of partnership we sign is generally with our customers. So companies with lots of engineering skills, technical capabilities, and know-how. We sign the joint development agreements wherein they can basically study our technology, jointly develop the use case for their business, and then just take it through their own procurement process, implementing it all by themselves. That's our preferred route generally with large customers. And the third go-to-market is direct sales, direct bidding on projects. We do some of it, but we don't necessarily do a lot of it right now. Just sheer size of some of these things could be really, really big. So yeah, preferred go-to-market is directly with customers, sign a joint development agreement, work with them to adapt the product to their use cases, and then it starts expanding. And the second one is with the engineering companies, construction companies, people who are actually doing stuff on the ground, to work with them to get our product into the customer site.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious for those joint development customers. Is there, let's say, like a limit to how much kind of custom development or how much you might stray in one use case or implementation from what you've done before? Or is that okay because of just the nature and kind of way that it's structured, that every customer can kind of truly take it in the direction they need?
I mean, it's all a new space right now, right? So it's kind of hard to kind of put guardrails to say, well, actually, we'll only do this, and we'll, if it's more than that, then we turn back. So it's hard to put guardrails. But our starting point generally is that we provide a standard modular replicable carbon capture units. Now, if there's something to be modified because it needs to suit your standards, your site, your location, your specific circumstance, then that's very much doable. And our people say, well, actually, we'd like to sort of tweak this component, or we would like to have, for example, AI built on top. So in that case, I mean, I think it's in mutual interest to do that. But our strategy generally is to focus on, hey, we provide standard modular processes. If you start making tweaks, you would take out that standard and modularity out of it. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there.
Yeah, there always is. And I think though the way you describe in the state of the market where you are, that you've got that right balance, I think, and the stage of the company too, right? I was talking to CEO of a very early stage company in healthcare, and they work with endpoint locations, and we're thinking of more of a SMB mid-market approach where they would need a lot of volume of customers to make the business model work, and then got interest from someone in the Fortune 50. And all of a sudden, right, it brings the questions of, do you put all your eggs in that basket, which would actually be a fantastic flagship customer, but that takes you in a very different direction than working with the smaller players.
Totally. I think that's a risk. That's completely a risk. But I think it's also a big opportunity to partner like that.
Right. And can you talk about how your sales organization is structured to support your different go-to-market motions?
Yeah. Again, that's another great question. And I have to say, our sales organization the structure kind of changes every 18 months. I think mature the product. And or sometimes when the geopolitical situation changes, you have to
Yep, I
step
can
back.
imagine.
You have to take a step back and say, well, ooh, I'm not sure. So our sales partnership and commercialization efforts are all sort of wrapped in one organization that's led by our chief growth officer. So we don't have a chief sales officer, chief business officer. We have a growth officer because this is again sort of helping our customers grow their ambition as we grow our business as well. So within this remit, we would probably have two types of people. One are strategic partnerships people, so engineering companies, delivery partners, and the second type of people we would have is with our customers, so key accounts management. Those are the two type of people we would have within our growth organization. It's fairly concentrated because as a business we can only serve a few large multinationals and for a few large customers. So from a go-to-market perspective, we've kept it pretty tight. And at any given point of time, we probably work with like 6 to 7 companies in that space, trying to get like a couple of sales, partnership, business development deals over the line. But it's very concentrated, and it's a very tight ship that we run there.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I too could talk about this topic all day long, but I have some other things I'd love to hear from you, and maybe getting a bit more personal. So tell me a little bit about, your background, who you were you as a child, and, how did that shape your career?
Right. Yeah. So I was born in India in a town called Bhopal, which is sometimes famous for wrong reasons. Where the largest chemical industrial disaster happened in that town in Bhopal. And interestingly, my parents were getting married 4 days after that. So they got married up 4 days after the disaster. So our whole family tree was in Bhopal that day when the industrial disaster happened. So I grew up seeing the impacts of uncontrolled industrial emissions at one location, and that's what sort of did that industrial disaster. So I grew up with a sort of sense of mission to do something about industrial decarbonization or work in this space. So born up in Bhopal. I then went to schooling in military school in Bhopal, just outside Bhopal, and then went to IIT. Then got an opportunity to come to the UK, and our company got funded by the British government. We got a grant, $6 million, which in those days was early days of any business is a lot of money. So we moved lock, stock, and barrel to London. Nobody had ever been to London from the whole company. We were a company of like 5 people at that point of time. So it was a steep learning curve to come and set everything up in London and then start here. And then, that was in 2013. So we've been going since then. First lab scale projects, pilots, then commercial demonstrations in Germany, and then now operating into other countries. So I think I've been incredibly fortunate to have had the opportunity to work with some very brilliant people who have helped both me and my company to sort of become and develop into something that we are today.
Yeah, it's an amazing story, and the experience of growing up near such a major industrial tragedy gives so much weight to what you're building now. I'm curious if were you always entrepreneurial? Was there something entrepreneurial in your ethos, or is that something that emerged during university?
I mean, I have to say it was a little bit of a stupidity as much as a passion. I mean, why would you start a company in climate tech space in India in the middle of financial crisis? So you have to have a passion to be able to do things. Yeah, I think this is something that definitely emerged in me during the days at university. I come from a family of civil servants. So everyone's been civil servants, and nobody's ever done business before. So yeah, so clearly there were some interesting conversations at home, especially with my parents, because I was graduating from IIT, one of the primary institutions in India. And I said, I'm not going to take any job. I'm going to start the business. And my parents were like, what? Are you out of your mind? So I think there was some interesting conversations. Um, yeah, in those days.
Yeah, you have to be very mission driven to hold strong through that. I mean, my parents are both were in academia, but the ethos growing up was very much kind of university and make sure you get your PhD and all of this, and so the business track and all of that felt very foreign in the household too.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, my parents still do not believe that I can be a good CEO without having an MBA. So I don't have an MBA degree, and my parents are like, "Well, you don't have an MBA. How can you be a good CEO?" I was like, The link is not really that important, I guess."
Yep. Learning on the job, nothing beats that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I know we talked a bit about, a lot about your company and kind of the mission behind it and all of that. I would love to hear maybe a bit more about the customers and the kind of transformations that they're going through. Earlier in our discussion, you mentioned kind of the 10-year timeline. Can you put that into context a bit? Just what the customers are experiencing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll probably start from like our customer conditions and goals, and then sort of backwards towards what does it mean for Gauntlet, and where we are right now. So if you think about 10-year horizon for our customers, they're looking to they're on a journey to decarbonize their sites and locations. And by definition, most of our customers are global operators. They would have operating sites in multiple geographies. I think there is a lot of wrangling going on in terms of like what solutions work within the wider umbrella of carbon management. I mean, you can have carbon capture, you can have electrification, you can have hydrogen, you can have offsets. There's so many things you could do. So I think from our customer's perspective, there is a very clear route to say that a certain percentage, a significant minority of the decarbonization will come from carbon capture, which then means across around top 10 customers, they're probably looking to buy about $10 to $20 billion of the hardware over the next 10 years. To give you an idea, today, the total supply capacity in the market from all the companies in carbon capture space is about $10 billion. So what's quite clear is nobody will be able to meet the demand coming from the top users or the demand that'll be out there. What that means for us is it's an opportunity for us to probably capture 10 to 20% of that market. So I would say $1 to $2 billion worth of revenues over next 10 years. But more importantly, it's also an opportunity for us to build a whole supply chain there. I mean, if you think about Tesla, one of the reasons there are so many Teslas available out there is because they've got the economies of scale. They've got that product that they used again and again and again, that it has achieved standardization, cost optimization, availability, after sales service. I mean, there's so much that's been achieved, and we are trying to go to the same route to say we can standardize our boxes and potentially sell 100 of them over the next 5 years. The route from there, selling 100 boxes over the next 5 years, to selling maybe 500 boxes from year number 6 to year number 10 is way more easier.
Yeah. I'm curious with these kind of transitions and transformations that you've seen. Are you finding different stakeholders at the table now, either different types of companies, different roles within leadership within these organizations involved?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's like I said. I mean, earlier we talked about the learning curve and an education piece. So I think to be able to drive some of these partnerships and sales efforts forward, you have to have a multi-layer conversation where it could be strategic at a very high level. It could be about money and the savings at the middle level. down to how would you do it at the working level. So there are multiple conversations those are involved in anybody making a decision to progress forward with our product at their sites and locations. And again, I mean, not a lot of people have had the experience of implementing carbon capture. It's not something that's been built for past 15, 20, 30 years. So there is a steep learning curve at all different levels. And that's really where, I think we enjoy, so my people actually enjoy engaging with customers, telling them about our product, telling them about how we can make their life easier, how we can help them meet their targets with that very, very efficiently at a price that makes sense.
Yeah, I could see that. I think as as leaders and entrepreneurs, right, that's where a lot of the value and excitement comes from, is having those kinds of collaborations and knowing that you're having an impact and bringing customers kind of through that journey.
Okay.
So before we wrap up our conversation, I'd love to end on maybe a more introspective note. One of the benefits, right? Hindsight, I say, is always 2020. But if you were sitting in a room with your younger self in your first kind of leadership responsibility, what advice would you give yourself, knowing what you know now?
I would say take more risks. I think, when I was a little bit younger, I was like super conservative, haven't done this before. So probably I should probably gone to the couple of markets a little bit earlier. I should have gone to some of our customers with a little bit more aggressive offering. Because like I said, I mean, all of this is happening for the first time. So yeah, I would have said take more risk.
That's a good one. That one resonates with me because that's one of my top few as well. So I can certainly appreciate that. It takes a lot to kind of push outside the comfort zone and be willing to fail, right? That comes along with taking the bigger risks.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, as we wrap up today's conversation, if people want to reach out to you or connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
First name dot second name at carbonking.com.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. This was such a wonderful conversation and a powerful story, and all the industry insights that you've shared. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Natalie. Yeah, it was a great conversation. Thank you for choosing our business, our company, Carbon Clean, and providing it a platform to share our story and our journey with all the listeners and all the audience. So thank you so very much.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you too to all of our listeners. I loved hearing about so much of what we discussed today, including how Carbon Clean is navigating one of these incredibly fast industrial transformations, which I've learned more about today, and your personal experience as well. So if today's episode gave our listeners any valuable insights, and I'm sure that it did, please share this with someone. We know that spreading this kind of knowledge and information helps all of us grow as leaders and helps us drive successful transformation in our organizations. So thank you again. And this has been another wonderful conversation on Shift and Thrive. I'll see you all next time. That's a wrap for this week's episode. For show notes and more, visit shiftandthrivepodcast.com. A special thank you to our sponsor, Magnitude Consulting, bringing you the thinking power of a growth consultancy and the getting it done power of a full-service marketing agency to help B2B companies fuel their growth. For more information on Magnitude and to get your complimentary transformation readiness assessment, visit magnitudeconsulting.com/getready. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.